Ladies and gentlemen, good day everyone, and welcome to Vipshop Holdings Limited's second quarter 2021 earnings conference call. At this time, I would like to turn the call to Ms. Jessie Zheng, Vipshop's Head of Investor Relations. Please proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, operator. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining the Vipshop second quarter 2021 earnings conference call. With us today are Eric Shen, our co-founder, chairman, and CEO, and David Cui, our CFO. Before management begins their prepared remarks, I would like to remind you that the discussion today will contain forward-looking statements made under the safe harbor provisions of the U.S. Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Forward-looking statements are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results to differ materially from our current expectations. Potential risks and uncertainties include, but are not limited to, those outlined in our safe harbor statements in our earnings release and public filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which also applies to this call to the extent any forward-looking statements may be made. Please note that certain financial measures used on this call, such as non-GAAP operating income, non-GAAP net income, and non-GAAP net income per ADS, are not presented in accordance with U.S. GAAP. Please refer to our earnings release for details relating to the reconciliations of our non-GAAP measures to GAAP measures. With that, I would now like to turn the call over to Mr. Eric Shen.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our second quarter 2021 earnings conference call. In the second quarter, we kept up our solid business momentum with core operating metrics continued to trend healthily. Our user base maintained its strong growth, driven a continued increase in total GMV. During the quarter, our total number of active users grew by 32% year-over-year to 51.1 million, and our total GMV increased by 25% year-on-year to RMB 48.1 billion. Our most valuable user group showed especially strong growth momentum, with cumulative Super VIP membership increased by nearly 50% year-on-year, contributing about the third of the total GMV in the second quarter of 2021. These encouraging developments were the result of our relentless efforts to calibrate our strategic focus and increase operational synergies. In the second quarter, we continued to robustly execute on our merchandising strategy. Our buyer teams successfully collaborated with increasing number of suppliers and brand partners. As a result, we have not only been able to attract ever increasing amount of unique branded merchandise to be sold on our platform, but have been able to do so at Vipshop's favorite discount price. In addition to our traditional deeply discounted inventory covering an extensive range of brands, we now also carry a considerable proportion of made-for Vipshop products. These are products specially customized for Vipshop by our brand partners. We are committed to increase the breadth and depth of our merchandising portfolio to offer users a differentiated selection of high-quality merchandise while creating dynamic price advantage for our discount sales. In the second quarter, we successfully instituted refinement at an operational level. User experience is one of our clear priority. To this end, we implemented several initiatives, including better matching of merchandising selection to target users and improving overall incentive for our most valued users. On top of this, we also leverage effective marketing to attract more younger shoppers to our platform. Looking forward to the second half of 2021, we remain committed to execution on our merchandising strategy. We are dedicated to create value for our new and existing customers, while also increasing the value we add for our core brand partners. We believe this will solidify our leading position in China's discount retail market. At this point, let me hand over the call to our CFO, David Cui, who will go over our operational and financial results.
Thanks, Eric, and hello everyone. We are pleased to report a strong set of results for the second quarter of 2021. During the quarter, we delivered solid top-line growth with total net revenue reaching 29.6 billion RMB, representing a year-over-year increase of 22.8%. We also witnessed the sustainable growth momentum in business development, which is evidenced by our number of active customers and total orders growing by 32% and 30% year-over-year, respectively. Non-GAAP net income attributable to Vipshop's shareholders also increased by 11.3% year-over-year to 1.5 billion RMB. In the second quarter of 2021, we repurchased approximately $301 million of our ADS in accordance with the $500 million share repurchase program we adopted in March earlier this year, showing both our confidence in the robustness of our business model and our dedication to delivering long-term value to our shareholders. Before I get started with detailed quarterly financial highlights, I would like to clarify that all the financial numbers presented below are in RMB, and all the percentage changes refer to year-over-year changes unless otherwise noted. Total net revenue for the second quarter of 2021 increased by 22.8% year-over-year to 29.6 billion RMB from 24.1 billion RMB in the same period last year, primarily driven by a large number of total active customers. Growing profit for the second quarter of 2021 increased by 20.6% year-over-year to 6.0 billion RMB from 4.9 billion RMB in the same period last year. Gross margin for the second quarter of 2021 was 20.1% compared with 20.5% for the same period in 2020. Total operating expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 4.8 billion RMB compared to 3.8 billion RMB in the second quarter of 2020. As a percentage of total net revenue, total operating expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 16.4% compared with 15.8% in the second quarter of last year. Fulfillment expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 2.1 billion RMB as compared with 1.7 billion RMB in the same period in 2020. As a percentage of total net revenue, fulfillment expenses for the second quarter of 2021 decreased to 6.9% from 7.0% in the second quarter of 2020. Marketing expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 1.4 billion RMB as compared with 1.0 billion RMB in the same period of 2020. As a percentage of total net revenue, marketing expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 4.8% compared to 4.3% in the second quarter of 2020. The increase was primarily due to higher investment in advertising activities relating to customer acquisition and retention. Technology and content expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 369.9 million RMB compared to 305.4 million RMB in the same quarter in 2020. As a percentage of total net revenue, technology and content expenses for the second quarter of 2021 decreased to 1.2% from 1.3% in the second quarter of 2020. General and administrative expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 1.0 billion RMB compared to 804.6 million RMB in the second quarter of last year. As a percentage of total net revenue, general and administrative expenses for the second quarter of 2021 were 3.4% as compared with 3.3% in the same period of 2020. Income from operations for the second quarter of 2021 increased by 18.6% year-over-year to 1.5 billion RMB from 1.2 billion RMB in the second quarter of 2020. Operating margin for the second quarter of 2021 was 5.0% as compared with 5.1% in the same period last year. Non-GAAP income from operations for the second quarter of 2021, which excluded the share-based compensation expenses and amortization of intangible assets resulting from business acquisition, increased by 16.1% year-over-year to 1.7 billion RMB from 1.5 billion RMB in the second quarter of 2020. Non-GAAP operating margin for the second quarter of 2021 was 5.9% as compared with 6.2% in the second quarter of 2020. Non-income attributable to Vipshop shareholders for the second quarter of 2021 was 1.1 billion RMB compared to 1.5 billion RMB in the same period last year. Net margin attributable to Vipshop shareholders for the second quarter of 2021 was 3.7% as compared with 6.4% in the prior year period. Net income attributable to Vipshop shareholders per diluted ADS for the second quarter of 2021 decreased to 1.56 RMB from 2.24 RMB in the second quarter of the previous year. Non-GAAP net income attributable to Vipshop shareholders for the second quarter of 2021 increased by 11.3% year-over-year to 1.5 billion RMB from 1.3 billion RMB in the second quarter of 2020. Please note that non-GAAP net income attributable to Vipshop shareholders excludes a number of items, the details of which can be found in our earnings release. Non-GAAP net margin attributable to Vipshop shareholders for the second quarter of 2021 was 5.0% as compared with 5.5% in the same period last year. Non-GAAP net income attributable to Vipshop shareholders per diluted ADS for the second quarter of 2021 increased to 2.10 RMB from 1.92 RMB in the second quarter of 2020. As of June 30, 2021, the company had cash and cash equivalents and restricted cash of 16.5 billion RMB and short-term investments of 3.6 billion RMB. Looking forward to the third quarter of 2021, we expect our total net revenue to be between 24.3 billion RMB and 25.5 billion RMB, representing a year-over-year growth rate of approximately 5% to 10%. Please note that this forecast reflects our current preliminary views of the market and operational conditions, which is subject to change. With that, I would like now to open the call to Q&A.
Certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, you can press the # or # key. Once again, it is *1 to ask a question. Please note there might be a slight pause as we compile the Q&A roster. We have the first question. This is coming from the line of Feitong Zhang from CICC. Please go ahead.
Hi, Shen Zong, Cui Zong, and Jesse. This is Feitong from CICC. Thanks for taking my question. I have two questions. My first question is regarding to the competitive landscape. We observed some short video platforms are doing really well this year in their e-commerce business, and some brands are exploring destocking at these channels. How should we think about the competitive landscape of the stock industry going forward? Any color would be very helpful. The second question is regarding to the third quarter guidance. How should we think about the third quarter guidance? Did we observe any impact from the pandemic in July and August, as we factored in our third quarter guidance? Should we expect acceleration in the fourth quarter if the pandemic gets well contained? 那我来简单翻译一下我的问题谢谢管理层接受我的提问。我有2个问题，第一个是想请教一下沈总竞争格局。我们观察到今年很多短视频平台的电商都做得不错，并且也有些品牌在陆续尝试在短视频平台去库存。如何看待未来尾货特卖这个市场，品牌方和消费者对于去库存平台的选择？那么第2个问题的话呢，是想请教一下管理层，三季度指引5%到10%的增长，是否有考虑到我们7月份、8月份爆发的一个短期的疫情？是否还有别的因素？如果短期疫情得到有效控制的话，4季度或者说下半年，我们会期待环比加速吗？谢谢。
那个回答第一个问题是关于那个有短视频那个直播短视频，我们看到现在是就很多平台上有那个就直播卖货，那么但是呢也有品牌，它有卖它的新货，也卖它的老货，所以理论上看到，包括呢就是说，其实他们会吸掉一些顾客的眼球包括购买那么我们其实想就是说这块对我们这块来讲，我们在想，不管今天用什么方式，其实最终就是说货品，就是说你是不是有货品有足够的优势，比如说价格有足够的优势，品牌有足够的优势，那么这个是王道。所以说我们其实现在呢，因为我们自己直播做的很少所以说我们其实也只有在我们自己目前的那个经营模式中，我们继续加强我们的品牌，加强我们的价格，让顾客更感知到我们唯品会特卖的优势。那么另外呢，对于这种叫比如说像那个就是这种短视频其实我们看到会吸掉一部分的眼球跟流量，但是呢，因为大家的用户的时长还是有限的，包括要买个什么衣服买个什么，大家不会长期花太多的时间在那个直播上刷，所以说我们相信就是说会有一些影响，但影响不至于太大。那么这是第一个问题第二个问题呢，就是说是关于Q3 的指引。Q3 的指引呢，我们其实一方面几个因素一方面呢就是说我们去年的 Q3 是做得很好，因为去年确实有疫情的后的反弹那么今年呢，我们有看到，比如说今年因为疫情的反反复复，有部分省份、部分城市，所以说其实也影响了当地的消费跟大家的购物情绪，所以说我们其实有考虑这方面的因素。那么另外的话呢，就是说对于未来的长期，如果在 Q4 那个疫情如果要彻底结束，我们其实对未来还是有信心的，而且呢，尤其是我们说的 Q4 其实是个购买的旺季嘛，而且是我们每年最好的一个季节，所以说我们其实对长远而言，我们其实还是有信心的。
Okay, let me translate the first answer to the first question in terms of live streaming models. There are a lot of platforms that are selling through live streaming, whether it's branded or it's low in season, slow moving old inventories. I think these platforms primarily are capturing a lot of customers' attention. But no matter what, the most important thing is merchandising, whether it's pricing advantages or brand advantages. That's the most important thing for customers. For Vipshop, actually we do less live streaming, but what we focus most is to creating differentiated value for customers in terms of both branded merchandise and the pricing advantages. So despite the fact that short video platform have some impact in terms of attracting a lot of time spent from customers, but it will have just some limited impact on our own business. In terms of the Q3 guidance, there are a few factors entering Q3. We've seen consumer sentiment is not as strong amid a weaker macro environment, which was partially related to some natural disaster in certain provinces and the resurgence of COVID-19 here and there. And recall that we had a tough base in the same quarter of last year, as we did see some strong recovery from the end of COVID-19. And also, Q3 is traditionally a live season and also live for the apparel industry. But turning to Q4, typically Q4 is the peak season where apparel ticket sizes tend to be larger, and we will run promotion events as well as everyone else within the industry. So Q4 should hold up relatively well as long as the COVID-19 pandemic ends at that time.
Thanks. Very helpful.
I would like to add on something what Eric just mentioned. That number one is that remember last Q3 we had a booming business post COVID-19, so we had a larger base for this year. So that's why we had a softer guidance for the Q3 this year. So that's number one. Number two is that we should notice that our active customer base are actually grown year over year 32%. So that does provide a foundation for us to grow our future business, and that's also a strong indicator that our business is healthy, and then that should help with our future growth.
Thanks. 谢谢沈总、崔总，非常有帮助，谢谢。
Thank you. We have the next question. This is coming from the line of Eddie Wong from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
谢谢沈总、崔总还有 Jessie 接受我的提问。那我先用中文问吧，然后再用英文翻译一下我自己。对，其实我其实想请教一下这个沈总和崔总，就是说我记得上次在一季度的业绩的这个电话会上，那个是5月份，那个时候给到的指引大概是在20到25的这个 percent year-over-year for 2季度的这个收入的增长。那个时候好像沈总还是说，就是对这个业绩这个指引还是蛮有信心的，感觉指引还是给的偏保守。那就是说可能到最后6月份是不是有一些什么特殊的情况，就是导致了就是说6月份的整个的这个销售比我们预期的要稍微弱一些，导致了就是说全年最终的这个收入的增长没有超过这个指引的高端。其实就是想请教一下沈总，就是说有没有看到就是说这个5月份其实情况还 OK，6月份是不是有一些特殊的情况，包括 high base， 包括这个我不知道需求端是不是看到一些相对来说比较有压力的地方然后一个可能跟进的问题吧，就是说因为我们自己在看整个就是 NBS 社零的数据，其实7月份的整个线上或者线下的这个服饰类 apparel 的这个需求相对来说比较弱，这个会就是暂时您来看的话，这3季度的1个半月有没有对我们产生到一定的影响，所以导致了就是说除了您上次说您之前提到的就是说这个疫情的影响，包括这个基数比较高，那整个需求方面是不是也看到相对来说比预期是稍微弱一些呢？对，我就这2个问题，然后我自己可能先很简单的翻译一下。I have 2 questions. First is regarding the can give us the breakdown of by month, in the second quarter, because we remember that in May when during the first quarter earnings call you mentioned that your guidance for the second quarter actually has been a little bit conservative. So we all expect you will have a quite strong growth, but in June actually seems like that the sales situation is relatively weaker than expected. So can you give us more color on that? And second question is can also give us some color about how the apparel demand actually in July and so far in August, because if you look at the NBS, the retail sales of apparel, which show some weakness for the apparel demand. So I'm not sure whether or not this also impact our guidance for the third quarter. Thank you.
OK， 那么第一个问题就是我们说那个本来的我们的预估预估是20到25嘛。那么后面我们也发现，其实在6月份的时候，就是说包括6月其实是一个大家都抱以希望的，就是说电商的促销月嘛。那么其实发现就没有想象中这么好啊，就是说包括呢，其实现在的电商的促销月呢，就时间做得很长，都是从5月20几开始，一路上做到6月20号左右嘛，所以说其实大家都是拉长了。那么这样的话呢，导致我们说的其实用户的就是说整体的吸引力不够啊。那么再加上比如说我们其实一看就整个6月份不是那种叫特别旺的，那么我们原来呢有在6月份准备，比如说用一些促销手段，比如说我们要发一些代金券啊什么去拉动消费，后来看看如果要花了这些钱不一定能拉得回来，所以说我们也控制了我们的投入，所以总体是那个6月份是这个情况。那么我们其实在8月的就是说在 Q3 的这1个半月，我们也发现就是说整体的服装消费是有些疲软啊，没有我们当年想象中的这么旺，但是呢就是说也不是会太差，就是说但是呢就没有我们想象中这么好。所以说我们其实也在想，就是说可能是跟我们说的疫情反复有点关系啊，那么也有可能就是说整体的那个接下来的趋势会比原来会少一些，所以说我们其实也在看我们的未来啊，就是比如说这个服装生意的未来。但是呢我们看到那个品牌的就各种服装品牌的货品还是很多的，包括呢其实最近的疫情反复导致那些品牌的货品因为线下其实销售会有些不畅，那么导致线上的供给还会很多，所以说我们其实对未来还是有希望，尤其是我们像这种的线上平台嘛，那么我们认为其实对我们来讲也是个好机会。
Okay, in terms of the trend we have seen in June, as you mentioned, our guidance of 20 to 25%. Actually, in June we've already seen slower sales due to the longer promotional event for the whole e-commerce space. In the past, the e-commerce space tend to hold a 1 or 2, 3 day promotion events, but this has become a month-long promotion event, and it's becoming less and less attractive to customers. And back in June, we tried to deliver some coupons to customers to encourage their spend, but it did not turn very well. So we actually had some control over our marketing spend. And entering into the first one and a half months in the third quarter, we did see some weakness in the apparel category. It's not as strong as we had anticipated, but it's also not as bad as you probably have imagined. We think that it's primarily due to the resurgence of the COVID-19 here and there, and we are seeing the trend moving slower than before. But at the same time, you also see branded merchandise. Actually, they have very good inventory because the offline stores are not a very good place to sell due to the COVID-19. So actually, they have increased inventory online for us. So we have to see a couple of months to see how the trend turns out.
谢谢任总。
Thank you. We have the next question from Ronald Kiang from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Shen Dong, David, Jesse. So I have two questions, and I'll translate to Mandarin. The first question is on our third quarter revenue guidance of 5 to 10%. Just want to know how that user growth and ARPU is kind of put within this forecast. Just want to see whether our user growth remains quite strong or maintaining the trends in the second quarter, or and would that imply kind of ARPU will decline further on a year-on-year basis, and how do we see that into the fourth quarter as what we talk about as a peak season? And then my second would be on marketing spending, that we spend around 37% more in marketing spend in the quarter. You mentioned about some control during June in couponing, but this is still quite an increase. And so are we expecting more spending as we head into the second half, and how should we think of sales and marketing as a percentage of revenue, which is one of the metrics which has been around 4.8% of revenues in the second quarter. 那我翻译一下，第一个想听一下管理层对这个三季度的收入增速5%到10%，那这个是从用户和这个 ARPU， 我们的用户增长是不是会比较健康？那三季度会不会主要是 ARPU 的一个下降？那如果这个 trend 我们怎么看四季度的这个情况，是不是 ARPU 值怎么拉动？那第二呢，就我们这个sales and marketing 这边营销费用在二季度增长了大概 37%， 那对收入来讲是占 4.8%， 那这个也是比收入增速快呢。那刚才说到我们6月可能投入并没有做太多的这种 couponing， 那想知道如果进入下半年我们应该怎么去想这个营销费用？谢谢。
那个第一个问题就是关于那个第一个是什么？哦，对，关于 ARPU 呢，我们其实 Q2 的是跌了7个点嘛。那么我们其实看到，我们其实在未来的 Q3、Q4 还会跌，但是呢就不会高过这个数吧，就反正会跌得更少一些。因为我们其实几个方面，一方面呢就是说最近的跌呢，因为我们其实花了很多的那个精力去拉我们的这种叫历史上购买用户，还有呢就是拉新客，那么这样的话呢就导致我们这些新来的这些呢就 UP 会低一些，包括我们其实去年是新客我们是停止投放的，去年的 Q2 的那个新客是一开始疫情的时候是停止投放的，所以说这里是看到有这方面的影响。我们其实对目前看，包括最近这些时间，我们认为这个 UP 其实我们还相对稳定。另外呢，我们其实有把握的，比如说我们其实在 SVIP 上啊，我们最近增长的很不错。那么其实这些 SVIP 的，那么等于忠诚度越来越高，包括它的消费越来越高，其实这个对我们其实都是个利好。我们看到我们 SVIP 的消费是正常一个用户的大概10倍吧，类似是这么一个情况。那么刚刚问的第二个问题是市场前方晚知。哦，对 ，OK。
Hey, Ronald, I take on the second question regarding the marketing expenses. So with respect to marketing expenses, this is probably the area that we have more discretion, and you know the marketing expenses we split it between new user acquisition and existing user retention. So we have more discretion in terms of how we allocated the spending. And then as you can see in the second quarter, we grow our active customer base by 32%. We would expect that we will continue to grow our customer base, and in terms of the strategy, we will be carefully evaluate on how to execute in terms of the marketing strategies. And the objective for us is to maintain our marketing expenditure at a stable level, and not to in terms of the percentage of revenue, we would expect that number should remain stable. we would try to improve our efficiencies in terms of how we spend that dollar.
Okay, back to your question about trends. As you may have noticed that our ARPU for the second quarter decreased by 7% year-over-year. But for Q3 and Q4, we don't expect similar deceleration. We think the growth, the decline will be much moderated. We have spent a lot of time in reactivating our old customers as well as attracting new customers. But recall in the second quarter of last year, we actually stopped spending money on attracting new customers. So when entering into this year, we saw an increasing number of new customers and who may need some time to ramp up their spending, so which is still actually impacting the overall ARPU. But we think that the general trend for ARPU going ahead will be stabilized. We are confident because we've seen very strong growth in Super VIP memberships, who grew about 50% year-over-year in the second quarter, and we found that they have been very loyal and spending much more than an average customer. Actually, Super VIP members spend almost 10 times an average customer. So as long as we can grow our Super VIP members, we are confident that the ARPU will improve over time.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, management.
Thank you. We have the next question. This is coming from the line of Thomas Chong from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Good evening, management. I will ask questions on behalf of Thomas Chong. So I have two questions. The first question is about could management share some colors about the outlook for the second half of the year and also 2022, including the revenues and the gross profit margin and net profit margin. And my second question is, we mentioned about attractive young users. Do we have any updates about the initiations on user acquisition? 管理层，我翻译一下。我第一个问题是关于就是我们对下半年和2022年的一个展望，就是包括我们的一个收入、毛利和净利的一个展望。然后第二个问题是就是关于我们在获客方面有什么新的举措？就刚才也有提到，就是说我们想要就是吸引更多的年轻的用户。就这两个问题。
OK， 第一个就是对未来的展望啊，我们想就是说，其实像我们这种品牌特卖的生意，其实是应该是比较长期稳定的一个生意啊，而且呢，其实在用户心智中，大家还是喜欢品牌特卖，包括我们也看到未来的空间，就整个的市场空间，包括用户数，那么我们也会持续增加，所以说我们其实对未来还是蛮乐观的，但是呢，就有可能增速就没有像我们疫情，比如说对应这个，比如说像今年的 Q1、Q2 这么猛了。那么，但是我们自己认为，其实在未来我们是一个稳定的一个增长啊，比如说年度我们要增长多少，季度要增长多少，但是我们认为说，如果以后就是没有疫情的情况下，我们是一个很稳定的增长。另外呢，还有非常重要就是，其实我们自己对我们的净利率啊，就是对我们的净利率也是很有信心的，就是说其实也是一个长期稳定的一个很好的一个净利率。那么所以说这是对我们未来的2点的展望啊。那么刚刚第二个问题就是问这种新客的获取啊，我们其实看到我们现在新客的获取也是不错，尤其是新客里面的年轻人啊，那么包括我们最近看我们的00后啊，增长其实说我们讲的增长同比还增加，比如说6-7个点。那么另外呢，其实我们包括对这种新客这种获取，比如说我们最近也加大在一些短视频的那个平台上的投放，那么用这些比较新奇的、搞笑的、古怪的，那么我们说怎么有趣的来传播我们唯品会是做品牌特卖的，那么让大家有对那些新的用户，我们给他们一个强烈的灌输。所以呢，因为这个我们等于做了还不是特别长的时间，但是我们看到效果也不错，所以说其实我们也在不断的适应，说如何更多的用各种方法 来获取用户，另外呢，也大量的要准备获取新用户。
So in terms of first question on the outlook of the second half and beyond, we think discount sale is actually a resilient and long-term business, and many consumers have a mind share for discount sale. With our customer base continue to expand, we are very optimistic that we are going to have a relatively stable growth outlook. And in terms of net margins, we've mentioned many times we will continue to balance our top line growth and profitability, and we've been very profitable for many quarters, and in the future we will continue to maintain a solid level of profitability. And on our second question on new customer acquisition, we have various customer acquisition channels, and in the past we had been leveraging a lot of traditional channels like digital advertising to acquire younger shoppers, especially those who are born after 2000. We have been seeing a very decent ramp up in the contribution of the shoppers who were born after 2000, up by 6% year-over-year in the second quarter. And in the future, we will try to be more active in exploring more innovative customer acquisition channels such as live streaming, short video, etc., to attract an increasing number of younger shoppers to our platform.
好，谢谢管理层的回答。
Thank you. Shall we move to the next question? The next question comes from the line of Nelson Chung from Citi. Please go ahead.
Hi, management. Thanks for taking my questions. So I have two follow-up questions. The first question is regarding your guidance and your outlook. So looking beyond the third quarter revenue guidance and your expectation on fourth quarter, do you have any preliminary view on next year or medium-term normalization growth of the discount merchandising industry? And do you expect Vipshop to grow faster than the industry growth in future? So my second question is also regarding the new user profile. So wondering if management can provide more qualitative colors in terms of user mix from lower tier cities and the spending behavior from the new acquisition channel like the short video platform. 谢谢管理层提问，那我自己先翻译一下。我第一个问题是有关公司未来的展望。就除了你们的三季度的预期，然后四季度的四季度的预期之外呢，你们觉得公司在中期在这个行业里面的增长会不会保持一个稳定的趋势？然后管理层会有信心公司的增长会比行业涨得更快嘛？然后我另外一个问题是想请教管理层能不能多分享一下你们新增的用户里面包括一线城市的用户占比，或者然后就是消费行为等等的一些指引，谢谢。
对，那个就是第一个还是问那个就是对预估的增长，
是对行业的
对行业的
会能不能超过行业的增长？
那个就是这么看吧，就是说，比如说我们其实对未来的稳健发展我们是有信心的，那么而且呢，我们希望是比如说未来长期这几年都要以这种稳健的发展。那么看就是说，比如说我们要看我们这个行业是跟整个电商比呢，还是比如说是跟服饰行业比啊？那么我们其实看，因为我们不是那种叫全品类电商嘛，尤其主力我们是做服饰的。那么理论上我们因为线上的这种服饰的，那么包括我们做特卖的， 它的处理速度能力应该要优于传统的大盘的服饰，所以说我们其实对这个是有信心的。但是呢，假设说我们要跟整个电商行业比，那么因为现在的整个电商行业，我估计现在整个应该在增20%几左右嘛，所以说就是因为里面有各种各样的品类，所以说我们就难跟一定要拉通跟这个比。但是呢，我们就是说跟服饰行业我们是绝对有信心有把握。第二点就是问那个关于新用户的一些那个
低线城市
低线
构成
对，我们其实看到就是说我们的那个获客的，就是说或者说现在消费的，其实我们讲的低线的占比啊，其实到现在为止一直没有什么太大的变化。比如说我们也没有什么大起大落，说比如说哪个 Q 说低线城市暴涨，或者说哪个 Q 高线城市暴涨，其实都是一个比较平稳的速度。那么所以说我们目前的比如说1、2、3、4、5、6线的这些的消费就总体的占比其实都比较稳定。那么包括用户的新增啊，其实也都是比较稳定的，都是来自各个层级的。
谢谢。
Okay. In terms of the industry outlook versus Vipshop, you should be aware of that we are a fundamentally solid business, and if compared to traditional e-commerce platforms, we might face greater competition. But if you look at the apparel-related segment, we are the #1 in discount sale. We are very confident that our core competency in discount sale will outpace other peers in this particular segment. As you may know, that the general e-commerce industry still grow like 20% year-over-year. But for us, we are looking for relatively steady growth for the long-term future. In terms of user spend and user behavior across different tiers of cities, we have been seeing very stable trend in terms of GMV contribution, user acquisition, or ARPU. There is not so much changing in the user behavior of different tiers of cities.
Let me add on something on this. So I think we want to differentiate ourselves with other e-commerce platform in terms of that we only focusing on apparel related categories, and while the other e-commerce platforms may carry many more other categories. So we are confident that we have maybe the leading leaders in terms of how we process apparels sales and inventories. So we should outperform in these categories as compared our other e-commerce platforms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have our next question. This is coming from the line of Natalie Wu from Haitong International. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, management. Thanks for taking my question. And I'm asking the question on behalf of Natalie. My first question is concerned about new initiatives of the company. So can management share any colors to help us understand, are there any new initiatives or businesses that we are now taking a trial in, and can we share about their recent development? My second question is more concerned about our user engagement and user experience. Just now, I think management mentioned that there were some refinements in second quarter about improving the user experience on the platform. Just wondering what specifically were those refinements, and are there any operating metrics that could help us understand the improvement in user engagement. 谢谢管理层接受我的提问。那我是代表 Natalie 问2个小的问题。第一个就是关于公司的一些新的业务方面的进展，或者说管理层在这方面的一些考量，能不能有任何的观点可以跟我们分享一下？然后第2个问题其实是关于我们也是用户这一块的，就是刚刚其实有提到说我们也做了一些改进来提升用户的活跃度，然后包括提升用户的体验，能不能帮我们再分享一下具体是哪样的一些措施，然后尤其是有没有一些数据上面的这个指标可以帮助我们更好的理解这一块？谢谢管理层。
第一个就是问有什么新的业务，对吧？那么我们最近有主力聚焦还是我们的主业啊，因为我们认为其实我们现在在牢牢的要在把那个品牌特卖做深、做专、做精，所以说我们其实基本上99%的精力全部在我们的主业上面，因为我们认为其实这整个行业很大空间。那么另外呢，就是我们其实现在要不断的就是说聚焦扎根，那么把我们的这种买手制能力啊，包括我们对好货的那个就是说如何更好的支持那种好货，那么在我们上面获得曝光、获得流量，怎么跟用户连接，在这些方面我们是要把它做得更深更专。所以说我们其实现在呢有尝试这种创新业务，但是呢就是说现在因为对我们而言呢，就是说在创新业务上面投入啊，我们其实那个就没有占我们主要的管理层的精力，所以说我们其实还是聚焦我们的主业啊。那么第2个是问是什么？是用户体验啊，对，用户体验方面呢，我们认为说其实我们这个品牌特卖模式嘛，那么我们说的好品牌、好商品、好价格。那么这是非常重要的，而且我们要越做越有特色。那么另外呢，其实刚刚这3个好，我们要缺不了一个好服务，所以说我们其实在用户体验上面，我们今年也是大力投入。那么比如说我们现在的用户体验方面呢，因为我们在那个用户那个上面，比如说我们的那种叫那个无忧退货。那么另外呢，比如说尤其衣服的尺码问题嘛，退货率会比较高。那么今天如果他买 M 码不合适，那么我们等于上门换货，那么给那个比他大一码的。那么包括我们说的今天用户退货无忧，比如说今天用户只要一点我们的快递，就顺丰快递啊，上门去取货。那么所以说类似这些服务，我们其实在整个行业内做的是不错的啊。那么另外我们在整个前端，就是商品的那个我们讲购物的前端，我们也大力加强这些用户的体验，在服务的后端也加强用户的体验，包括我们在客服方面也大力投入，那么又加强那个用户的体验。所以说这些呢，我们其实看到就是我们就是说那个大力在改进这块呢，我们的 NPS 其实也是有好转，就是说包括用户对我们的认可啊，那么其实我们发现就是说其实我们只要做得好，用户是看得到，那么未来我们会在这些方面更大投入，在我们刚刚讲的4个好方面，我们其实都会持续长期投入。
I add something on this. As mentioned earlier, as of the end of Q2, our paid Super VIP grew by nearly 50%. So Super VIP members tend to spend a lot more than an average customer. So it's already contributed one third of our total GMV. So in Q2, we actually further increased our incentives to our Super VIP members, including an extra 5% off on selected merchandises. We provided a better targeted product to Super VIP members and improved our services. So in May, we also added a certain life of privileges for Super VIP members. And in future, we will continue to provide more attractive membership privileges to improve their shopping experience. And hopefully that will translate to more active customers into Super VIP memberships.
Okay, back to your first and second question. The first question is the new business development. Actually, we have been very focused on our core business. We've made it clear that we are reinforce our execution on merchandising strategy, and everything we do centered on that strategy. We're focused on discount sale and enhance our buyer capabilities. To the end, we are trying to optimize our brand portfolio and traffic acquisition with brands to enhance our competitiveness, and thereby consolidating our long-term core competency in the discount retail market. So 99% of management focus is on discount retail and the execution of merchandising strategy. Of course, we are trying a lot of efforts in innovative areas. We've been investing to fulfill our innovation, but that's not our current priority. In terms of enhancing our user experience through some operational refinements, you have to be aware that all the consumers are looking for good brands, good merchandise with good prices and good quality, and that should be matched with good services. So we've been investing heavily in bring our user experience to the next level, including a hashless return or exchange, leveraging our relationship with Shunfeng Express Delivery. And on the other hand, we have been increasing our efforts on our front end and back end in terms of customer service. We've seen that our core metrics evaluating customer service standards like NPS is improving very significantly. So in the future, we will continue to invest in our efforts in enhancing our customer service and enhancing our user experience.
Thank you, management.
Thank you. We have the next question from the line of Robin Liang from Daiwa. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks management for taking my question. This is Robin Liang asking on behalf of John Choi. I have two questions. Given the user growth is strong over the past 4 quarters, but ARPU is still showing a year-on-year decline, should we expect the ARPU to ramp up in 2022 when the new users normalize and the spending from the older users that we acquired this year to ramp up the spending? Would it be first half next year or the second half of next year? And should we expect to see less couponing by that time? And also the second question is on regulations. Are we seeing any positive or negative impact on our company? 谢谢管理层接受我的提问，我先翻译一下。我们的用户增长在过去的4个季度的很强，但是的 ARPU 呢还是有这个 year-on-year 的下降，所以我们会不会在2022年的时候看到这个 ARPU 会 ramp up， 当这个新的用户呢可能去慢慢的放缓下来，然后我们今年拿到的用户的 spending 也可以ramp up， 这个可能会在就是first half of 下一年呢，或者是 second half of 下一年，还有这我们的 couponing 会不会减少？然后第二个问题是我们有没有看到一些正面还是负面的影响？从这个监管的方面上面看，谢谢。
对，第一个问题就是我们现在的 ARPU 会降嘛，但是呢，就是说因为我们说是拉了大量的新客和老客，比如说我们今年那个我们讲的老客是什么概念？就是说历史上买过，但是最近没来买，那么那个所以说理论上呢，他们回来以后 ARPU 会低一些，但是呢一段时间后就会回升，包括新客也是这样，第一段时间会差一些，那么但是马上就会回升，那么随着每个季度也会提升啊。所以说这点呢，我们说现在看到，因为用户的基数要大很重要，那么 UP 哪怕现在说稍微跌一点的也不担心。 另外呢，我们其实包括我们现在在大力推的 SVIP， 我们其实想在未来要把这个 UP 搞正，就是说怎么样让顾客在我们这儿买更多，因为现在的 SVIP 的销售已经占到我们整个生意的1/3了嘛，所以说我们其实想在 SVIP 方面大力投入，那么让更多的人来买 UP 会有提升，所以说这是我们总体对整个 UP 的看法。那第二个呢，就是监管方面包括我们说现在那个对，就是说那个反不正当竞争和很严格的那种垄断的什么2选1那么其实我们认为，其实在监管严的情况下，包括我们说的大家就没有这种潜规则没有什么这种叫强制的做什么事情，所以理论上呢，对我们讲的发展其实是个好事。我认为其实我们也拥护这种监管，那么我们说的其实让我们有更公平健康的环境，那么大家凭本事来竞争，那么如何获取用户，而且呢就是包括现在也是对这种叫比如说大数据杀熟那么等等那么国家也监管，所以说理论上我们其实都是很拥护的这些决定。
Okay, on your first question on ARPU trends, we have mentioned ARPU is on the decline in the second quarter, but it's going to be at a moderate pace in the quarters ahead because it takes time for new customers as well as our old customers, which means historically they spend money on our platform, but recently haven't come to spend. So it takes time for these two types of customers to ramp up their spending, but on a quarter-over-quarter basis, we have seen very apparent pickup in their spending. So actually, we are not too worried about that. As long as we can grow our user base, ARPU is going to improve over time. And we've also mentioned that we are going to invest heavily in our SVIP super membership program. We want to improve their ARPU going ahead. So as their spending has contributed a third of our total net GMV, we are going to translate more customers into SVIP members, and that would help us to improve the ARPU over time. On your question on regulation, overall, we believe the recent developments in terms of internet regulations such as antitrust and unfair competition, as well as data security, especially the ban on forced exclusivity on merchants, will benefit Vipshop to some extent. That means we will have a more open and transparent market with fairer competition. We will have more opportunity to partner with the increasing number of brands, which will further enrich our branded merchandise selections on our platform. So generally, we are very welcoming these regulatory developments because Vipshop is going to benefit from them more or less.
Thank you. Due to time constraint, that concludes our Q&A session for today. I would now like to hand the conference back to Jessie for any ending remarks. Please take over.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today. If you have any questions for follow-up, please don't hesitate to contact me. We look forward to speaking with you next quarter.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our conference call for today. Thank you all for your participation. You may disconnect your lines now.